Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 23rd Urban Design Commission meeting. Jess, if you could note the roll, we will call the meeting to order. First order of business is approval of minutes from 2 weeks ago. Can I have a motion for approval? Tom, seconded by Jessica. Fantastic, thank you. Before we go any further into our meeting, I'm going to invite Stefan to give us some virtual meeting instructions.
Thank you. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add pronouns after their names if they choose. Please do not alter the current naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Staff, please use the raise hand feature. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on commission members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I see no registrations for item number 1, general public comment. So we can move on to disclosures and recusals. Any disclosures or recusals? Seeing none. Okay, then that can bring us to Jess for the agenda overview.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, on this evening's agenda, there is one public hearing item. It's a CDR request for UW clinics on South Park Street. The request includes 2 new ground signs that will be installed, one on South Park Street, one on Fitzhatchery Road. Both ground signs are smaller than what's existing on site today. The proposal also includes the removal of 2 address signs that are located above the roof line. On the building's wing wall. One of those signs will be eliminated completely, and the other one will be relocated to the canopy facing South Park Street. UDC is an approval agency on this request. Staff notes that this item is a potential consent agenda item. Item number 3 is an initial final request for a planned multi-use site at 2902 Dryden Drive. The development proposal includes phase 2 of the Prism, which we saw a couple years ago. And is a multifamily residential development. The UDC is an advisory body on this request. Item number 4 is an initial final approval request for exterior renovation to the Oak Ridge Commons Retail Center on Mineral Point Road. The property owner was not sure that they would be able to attend the meeting this evening, so they did want to share a few notes with the commission. And a supplemental information was provided to the commission earlier this afternoon via email and was also uploaded to Legistar to complete the record. This request falls under the purview of the large retail development regulatory framework. As such, the commission is an advisory agency on this request as well. And item number 5, the applicant has requested referral to the March 9th UDC meeting. As such, the UDC will only be taking action on the request for referral this evening. And finally, there is one informational presentation item on the agenda. That is for exterior renovations to the Vintage Brewing Company, located at 674 South Whitney Way in Urban Design District number 3.
Okay, thank you. I guess first order of business would be to look for a motion to refer item number 5. Okay, motion by Tom, seconded by Lois, and that'll be just a referral to a non-specific date in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Next order of business is, Kevin, I see. Have your hand raised.
And I believe that the intent was to refer that to the next UDC meeting was the applicant's request.
That's fine. Any time that works. But if you need us to be specific on it, we certainly can.
It would be good if the motion reflected the next meeting.
Okay, then Tom, I suppose you don't object to a friendly amendment to clarify the motion to the next meeting. Seconded. Thank you. Next item up is the consent agenda. Are there any nominations for consent agenda? Tom, I'll unmute you.
Okay. Yeah, I would nominate for consent these two signs. The ground signs are an improvement, and so is taking it off the top of the building. So I think it looks fine.
Okay. Is it seconded by Lois then? Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, then by consent, item number 2 is approved. And that brings us then to item number 3.
Okay.
Item number 3 is Dryden Drive. We saw this one a number of months ago as an informational, I believe. Jess, I'm sorry, can't you unmute yourself?
I am trying to share my screen, but it looks like Stefan has disabled me.
What?
I know. Can you believe it already?
Stefan, what a way to go out.
Unintentionally. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Kevin Burrow with Kenneth and Bruce Architects. What we have before you is a project that we did present just about a year ago for informational. It's the next phase of development at the Northport Shopping Center for multifamily housing called Prism 2. So it's a site highlighted in yellow in the center of the screen there. Can you go to the next slide, please?
It's the corner. Ooh, it's the corner.
So we have some concept or some existing photos here showing the surrounding context, with Prism 1 being the main feature there. Our overall site plan layout is shown here, where you can see we do have the building set back 50 feet off of the highway, which is a DOT setback requirement. I know that was a point of discussion at the last meeting, but that is something that we do need to maintain. We also did study a different building shape as well as we evaluated this project, looking at potentially a more linear building, but that did not provide the sufficient number of parking stalls underneath the building, while also providing the density and layout that we need for the upper stories. So we have adjusted the location of the building and reduced the amount of parking on the backside to be able to bring these buildings a little bit closer, while providing the outdoor amenity space, both on the first floor roof deck level, and then also on the 4th floor outdoor roof deck, which we will get to in a little bit. So we have added quite a bit of landscaping around the perimeter of this building, screening along the western side as well, up against the existing retail center. And then we will be utilizing that shared access drive, which someday in the future could be a public street. So we located our pavement sufficiently away and introduced a sidewalk element that would be outside of that zone. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what we have before you here is the first floor plan, where we do have the main entry of the building in the upper right-hand corner, so that the corner is the main entry space, which provides access to the accessible parking while also fronting on the street. And we also have located the exercise room along the north side of the building as well. So we just have 2 units fronting on Northport, and we have provided additional landscaping screening in front of those units because they do have the opportunity for direct entry, as do all of the units on the first floor. But we are sensitive to the location being on a major highway, but we feel with the 50-foot setback and the additional landscaping, we're able to provide a nice living space there. Go to the next slide, please. The 4th floor, I just wanted to highlight here, we have maintained a community room up on the 4th floor, with the roof deck facing towards the southwest, which would grant potential views towards Warner Park and also keep it sheltered from the highway noise as well. Same with the outdoor first floor plazas being sheltered away from the major highway. Next slide, please. So this is just a close-up image of the first building that was completed about 2 years ago. Prism 1 has been very successful. It was leased out and been a great feature to the neighborhood. So if you go to the next slide, please. We are intending to maintain this design integrity with similar materials, colors, and textures, with the one change of changing the red accent to a blue accent, just to differentiate the two buildings, but the other materials would remain consistent. So this provides a more cohesive environment here. And as you can see in this front end, we do have direct entries to all the first floor units along Dryden Drive here. Next slide, please. So here's a view at the corner then along North Point and Dryden Drives. So the main entry is right at this corner with two options, coming in off of Northport or off of Dryden Drive. Next slide, please. There's a more straight on view then where you can see the main entry also where the woman is in front of the building. And then there's a stair exit out as well, which has that sidewalk connection to it. Next slide, please. Here's a further view looking back up towards the sites in front of Northport Shopping Center. But you can see how the landscaping, existing trees, and additional screening are helping to sort of shelter this building a little bit from the highway. Next slide, please. And here's a view of that plaza area that we've created above the parking level, which has a direct connection down to the surface area parking and then also easy access for the residents of Prism 1 to be able to come across and share this outdoor amenity space. But again, this has been located to be sheltered basically from the highway and provide a quiet space outdoors for all residents. Next slide, please. So here's a context view then of where you can see both buildings. Prism 1 in the background and Prism 2 up front here. Again, similar design details and character, but simply changing the red accent to the blue accent. And the last slide just shows the exterior materials that we are proposing for the building, which again is consistent with the first Prism building, where we've got the masonry elements, the composite siding, the wood tone siding, and then the blue accent material. So with that, I can open up to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to mention that we do have a couple of other registrants in support who did not wish to speak, John Bruns and Alan Steinauer, available to answer questions. So with that, I will turn it over to the commission for questions or comments, and please also refer to the staff report. We're an advisory body to the Plan Commission, and staff is requesting our feedback on a couple of issues with regard to the building orientation on the site plan and screening and buffering. Who wants to get going? Shane, good afternoon.
Hello, thank you. A couple of questions for Kevin, first of all. So could you point out for me or just confirm the accessible entry to the building?
Yeah, it's actually along the Northport side of the building. So as you come around the corner, the entry is located on the corner. You have steps up off of Dryden Drive, but the accessible pathway is the sidewalk, which is just to the right of the image that's passing through there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you at all studied any alternatives. I know there's a lot of grade change that you're making up, but that is, I believe, such a long path from like the accessible parking to that accessible entry. Did you study if there were any other opportunities or options?
No, we did actually. We looked at trying to locate it along Dryden Drive, but as you mentioned, there is quite a bit of grade change here. And then with the access into the underground parking, we were limited such that we would not be able to provide much, if any, landscaping screening because we have a long serpentine type ramp access up to the entry level to get onto first floor. So we felt you're basically walking a similar distance. It is longer, I'll admit that, around the corner, but a much more aesthetically pleasing entry sequence than zigzagging in front of the building up to the main entry.
Okay. And then could you also point out for me or describe, or if there's anyone else available to describe, which of those trees are existing versus new?
The ones closest to the highway are existing, and then the ones against our building are the new ones. There are street trees along Dryden Drive as well, which are being maintained.
Okay. I think relative to one of the things we've been asked to examine was the plant screening, and I do think that there could be more trees or screening on that west property boundary. In particular, something that still keeps kind of that middle 3 to 6 foot zone open, but maybe something like crab apples or smaller scale trees in combination with other shade trees to really provide some canopy support to that roof deck plaza, but also provide some screening. There's some pretty big blank walls on that side, and then of course it just kind of faces the back side of the shopping center. So it felt like there could be a little bit more plant material along that edge. And then I think my last comment was in the plant list, there was just the common name of Tatarian maple, which if that is Acer genala, that can be an invasive species. So I would swap that out. Maybe something like a musclewood, Carpinus, and that's at those 4 kind of along the units on the east side. So the musclewood would be a nice substitute, or something like that, instead of the Tatarian maple.
Okay, no, that is fine.
And then I think just to respond to one of the other prompts that we were to look at for the orientation of the building, I felt like the proposal was a good orientation, kind of utilizing the shared driveway. I didn't have any, I know we discussed this previously in sort of the setbacks relative to Northport, but I think I'm in agreement with what the applicant here is proposing. That's all.
Before Lois, I do have a question with regard to your comments, Shane.
Sure.
Jess, I don't know if you're able to go to the renderings that are looking, I guess, toward the northeast. I just want to make a clarification on your suggested plan. Keep going down and screening a little bit further, looking at the other corner of the building where the deck is. There you go. That one. There. That one. So is the object of your plant selections to screen the commercial properties view of that raised platform, or to have something tall enough that it screens the commercial buildings from the view of the residents?
I was suggesting actually both. I was thinking that there should be something mid-level to screen the tall wall along that edge, but also importantly, I think in the rendering, the trees equated to the actual planting plan are 3 little quaking aspen, which I think you could use something larger like a honey locust or any number of other shade trees to provide some canopy support to that roof terrace space.
Okay, so they'll be tall enough when they grow to get over the height of the rail and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Lois.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think with regard to the building orientation and the setback, I think that the solution is acceptable. I think there's working within the confines of DOT and a lot of other site constraints, including that grade change. The right picture is on the screen right now. I'm wondering if rather than all of the guardrail facing the commercial area, is there maybe just facing the, I think it's Dane County Workforce Development or something. If that could be more of a solid to just be more effective screening for the use of that deck. And then my second question about that deck is there's a lot of green plantings shown in the rendering, but has the developer explained how they'll have incorporate plants on this deck? Because it will get pretty hot up there.
Right. No, those are good questions. The plants are representative, basically. We are not intending to do planting beds per se, so it might have been a bit of a stretch for the rendering sake, but potted plants or those types of amenities would be expected at this level. I want to clarify your suggestion for a solid rail. Is it just on the western side then, facing towards the shopping center?
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a benefit for the visual connectivity to the other development and for the parking. But I don't know, maybe there's even, I don't want to say trellis because that in some minds becomes, kind of the cross wooden thing. But something maybe either the same height and opaque or maybe even slightly taller. I think it would be a nicer space to have, a party that you're not looking out at the dumpsters, 20 feet over.
Yeah, we certainly can take a look at that.
Okay. That's all my comment. And, I think Shane covered the other part of it is just screening that very large wall. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I appreciate that they moved the building back. It looks like away from Northport, maybe 20 or so feet. I originally felt like some of those units were pretty close to a 6-lane highway. So I think it is an improvement not to have your bedroom window so close to the roadway there. So when they ultimately go to the Plan Commission, they're going to be looking for an advisory recommendation from the Urban Design Commission. Lois.
Well, I'll make a motion. I don't know if it's a motion for approval or a motion for advisory approval.
I think we can make a motion for approval. They're I just appreciate it if it would be either for initial or final.
Oh, for final approval, taking into account some of the comments about plant type and potentially that west wall guardrail.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Jessica. Okay. Let's see, lowered the hands. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no hands, then if I don't see any hands here in the next 5 seconds, then by unanimous consent, you've been granted final approval with those conditions mentioned by the commission. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us then to item number 4. Mineral Point Road.
Brad Koenig is registered in support and wishing to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brad Koenig with Sketchworks Architecture. On behalf of Oak Ridge Commons Limited Partnership, Steve Dorn, I'm here to present and request initial and final approval on the exterior renovations to a planned multi-use site larger than 40,000 square foot. This is the Oak Ridge Commons Retail Center, Lifestyle Center. We last spoke with the commission back in November of 2021, where we gave an informational presentation and talked about the intent of the design to modernize the Lifestyle Center at Oak Ridge Commons. As you can see there, the site plan, it will encompass the Walgreens. That was a discussion point last time of would Walgreens be included in this? And after discussions with them, they agreed that they would like to update their location to more of their prototype. So next slide. And so just looking at the site plan, the limitations of the renovations would be predominantly on the south side along Mineral Point Road, where we would be removing the large overhang and colonnade that exists currently in order to provide better visibility for the tenants and slightly larger signage area as well. And in doing so, we would update and replace the existing sidewalk. All of the parking and the islands would remain the same, but we would remove some of the built-in planter beds that are there that limit some of the functionality of that space, but then re-pour the sidewalk and provide kind of groupings of decorative planters with a variety of grasses and perennials in each one of those. And we have some examples of the decorative planters that we'd be providing both in groupings out at the front, in front of the cars, as well as along the building. And the green kind of dots that are there, that's kind of identification of kind of planter groupings that we would be proposing. Again, like I said, the Walgreens would be included in this, and that would include kind of the drive-through canopy as well. The next slide, that's good. So this is what kind of a few images here of what we've proposed, including the Walgreens, which is their new prototype design. And the rest of the center, essentially, as we discussed last time, we are looking at staining the orange existing brick firewalls that are there. And we have decided that we would stain the entire building. So the north side of this building, which is predominantly brick, facing a more modern kind of multifamily residential project, we would go ahead and stain that brick. And we spoke with Naukaw Midwest, which is a stain company out of Chicago. And they've also, I think, presented to the UDC as far as their process goes on some other projects here recently, as late as the end of last year. So it'd be look at doing the entire building in the kind of a light warm gray stain, and then a kind of a white, bone white EFS signage bands. And it really just allows, cutting back that canopy allows just greater visibility and better signage opportunities for the tenants. One of the things that I think Steve included in his letter to the commission, and is talking with the tenants that are existing in that space, they really have a strong desire to eliminate the canopy and get better sunlight and visibility both at night and during the day into that center, into their tenant spaces, and also a little bit larger signage area so that we can kind of space out the signs and not make them so grouped together with tenants that are typically 20 to 25 feet wide. Signage can get a little bit scrunched. So being able to spread that out a little bit more and have some larger availability for signage is the desire of the tenants that exist there. Next slide, please. Here's the kind of the end unit. We had talked a little bit last time. We had previous version we had this the brown cap kind of wrapping the corner, and And so we decided to dial that back a little bit, show kind of that existing brick that would be stained. Here it's at the men's warehouse on the far west side, and a little bit more substantial canopy that we would put on over the doors for weather protection. Next slide, please. Again, kind of the western half of the center, introducing some brick piers as kind of I'll call visual supports for that canopy. Again, the taller, by cutting back the overhang, we get a little bit taller signage area. The siding would be lap siding below the signage area, and then transition. That'd be a fiber cement lap siding, and then that would transition into the EFIS signage bands, which really allows for greater flexibility as tenants move in and out to follow kind of standards as far as signage and not have to patch any kind of solid material that would have holes or stuff like that from lit signs. Next slide, please. And again, you can kind of see the groupings of the plantings and just trying to make an overall environment that is flexible for tenants, like Firehouse Subs who have outdoor seating. The Dairy Queen has outdoor seating as well. So leaving a lot of space there by cutting back that overhang to allow flexibility for outdoor seating, outdoor plantings that currently don't exist there now. And just try to make that connection a little bit better. Next slide. Again, as we talked previously, kind of that main tower element, it is the desire to change the roof pitch and really the overall kind of architectural theme of this center to something a little bit more modern. We'd be replacing the asphalt shingles with a standing seam metal roof, just to try to give it that contrast and that brightness that I think it's lacking right now. Next slide. And the Walgreens Design, again, this is their new prototype design. This would be a fiber cement panel that is kind of stacked in nature. We would be introducing some more or additional storefront glazing. The two bays that are kind of right underneath Walgreens would be new glazing. And then that wraps the corner and incorporates the drive-through canopy as well. The brick would be stained. It's still the same color as that orange that's the rest of the building. So that would be maintained across the entire property as well. Next slide. And just another shot kind of at the center, kind of showing all the existing trash enclosures and mail slots and that sort of thing. That would all remain. It would really just be the new planters and plantings that are in that enlarged area for seating and whatnot. Next slide, please. Again, kind of the typical material palette. We've got the existing kind of lap siding that will be put in new where we have new windows coming in. We have the existing brick firewalls that would be stained that kind of warm gray color. We would then have kind of a dark bronze metal fascia at some of these tower-like elements that we're trying to create a little bit more verticality of the building. I mentioned the standing seam metal roof, and then the canopies, and then some of these accent brick piers that complement the stained brick below the canopies there. And then we've got just EFIS on the signage bands, and in between in this particular where Firehouse Subs is, the lap siding would kind of divide that space and make those two spaces a little bit more unique by the lap siding and the canopies. Next slide, please. And then the Walgreens, since this is kind of a new component that was added, like I said, the fiber cement wall panels that are kind of stacked, and then they have a red accent band that works with their signage, and then the white metal fascia, and then the stained existing brick beyond. So I'll answer any questions that anyone might have at this time.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for questions and comments. There are no more registered speakers. I do have one. I think there's a slight improvement over last time. I guess my biggest concern is the vertical height of the ephes bands, and I really think it could be help with some kind of a framing of a metal panel or a metal fascia top and bottom a little bit thicker. I just think that when I look at the building, the signage band of ephes proposed versus existing, it looks like we're having more ephes as a signage band and then before, and that's probably because you're cutting back the overhang and the elevation gets taller, but I think it could benefit from a little bit. Yeah, we have that metal fascia bone white, a more substantial continuous fascia to frame that ephes. It seems to be pretty well framed on the sides. It's lacking something consistent throughout the plaza. The only other thing before I turn it over to Christian is a question about gutters and downspouts. With the projecting canopies, will there need to be some aluminum downspouts, residential style downspouts that we're going to ultimately see that get all dented and banged up with snow removal? I think you should be able to unmute yourself, Brad.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, there will be gutters and downspouts needed. We're trying to kind of hide that in the fascia itself, so that you don't see the gutters. And then the downspouts will have to kind of get tucked in the inside corner of the brick piers at each one of those major bump outs. Correct.
Yeah, it's important that all gets planned out pretty well, so it's not an afterthought. Is there an internal, where the new standing seam roof is over the existing slope roof? Is there an internal gutter there, or how is the water being managed off of that new standing seam roof?
Well, the existing, there's a gutter all the way across the front, and so this would be built in. Yes, another gutter essentially would be built in conjunction with that standing seam roof, so it's hidden within the band of the new roofing system, and then it will continue behind, especially in this picture at Firehouse Subs. It would continue slightly behind the Firehouse Subs and then come out. In this particular case, we'd want to try to get that out on the side of that pier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're not having an internal roof drain on that. You also have to figure out a way to bring those downspouts,
right,
and drain them over somewhere. What, the sidewalk? It's kind of come down on the sidewalk or something.
They have there's a perimeter system, so it would tie into the existing conduit.
Okay, thank you, Christian, and then Lois.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll leave the building comments more to the architects, though I will say that I'm going to kind of miss those arched walkways and flying buttresses that were along the front of that building. I always thought it was kind of an interesting look, especially in the long view. My comments are mainly about the planned planters along the front, and kudos to you for dressing up the front of this building, especially with the color palette of it. I think some vegetation and flowers is going to go a long way towards brightening up the various shades of white and gray. I think you're taking the wrong tack with thinking that these planters can have the perennials that you've gave a short list there. It's really tough to grow perennials and keep them alive in planters like this. Those perennials that you listed are all hardy in Wisconsin, but that means hardy in the ground where the ground temperatures, they both freeze slowly in the fall and thaw slowly in the spring. And when you try to grow perennials in containers like this, even though some of these bigger ones have, a thin layer of insulation in them, when you use a soilless mix in these, which is typically what is used, they can both freeze and thaw through and through in a single night. And that can happen repeatedly in the spring and again in the fall. And it just destroys the root structure of the plants and stuff. And that's why you hardly ever see anybody growing perennials in containers like this. So thumbs up for the variety and the amount of planters you have, but you should really be thinking that these are going to be for flowering annuals in the spring and the summer, and sort of commit yourself to that. I don't really see any feasible way that you would have any luck keeping the plants you have listed, happy and healthy long term in a situation like this. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll make note of that as we make some recommendations. Lois.
So I have a comment and then a question. My comment is you have a black standing metal seam roof that is pitching towards the walk. So I'm just you may want to make sure that's really a beefy edge to it, because I've seen entire systems come off with the weight of snow and it's going to melt on a hot, especially black roof like that. So just make sure that's well designed so no one walking under there gets a rude awakening at some point on a sunny winter day. So maybe we could go to the Oak Bridge Commons center part on the rendering. There are a couple things on that one. It's got a lot of levels that I think could be simplified. One is that I think the EFS area, the Oak Bridge, that would benefit from a framing. And maybe that one is black. And then I'm not sure what those materials are, the black dots. I think those are a little distracting. And I'm wondering if that part of it between the ground and the underside of that EFS could be simplified by maybe even staining the brick pillars different. Like maybe those are just black and you simplify that large signage band and bring that inboard of the columns or something, because there's a lot going on that I think is a little distracting. And then is that intended to be lit up at night?
Which part, Lois?
That high glassed canopy area above Oak Bridge. And maybe go to the next. There's a
at the center. Okay.
Center. Sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at my other screen where I had it up.
Right.
I'm not noticing that it wasn't the right one. So the almost little dots look a little distracting.
Oh.
So I think that whole thing could be more simplified and actually become a little bit more of a focal point if you switched the color of the brick stain to the black and then brought that signage in. So it's not proud of the brick, and
sure.
It could be a lot more simplistic. But then, so the top part and even that upper window, are those illuminated at night?
The upper windows are not. The Oak Bridge, there isn't an existing Oak Bridge Common sign there now, but that was something that was kind of desired as kind of a common, location signage. And so I see that being illuminated. Now, I will say that we have EFS along that top band, and after kind of the last few days of discussion, I think we would eliminate that ephes in that location and just leave it brick. And then those existing kind of black dots, those are green right now, in contrast to orange. And so we were kind of painting those, but I could definitely see your comment about maybe taking the whole tower and going darker with it. That would kind of tie in with the other darker piers that we have.
Right.
But I would make a suggestion that we eliminate that ephes band where it says Oak Ridge Commons and just leave that the brick, and stain it a color. I think that was actually one of the previous comments, and we just missed that detail.
So there was no, I guess I'm now looking at the existing photograph. So that glazing was never, I think it looks actually more opaque in the existing, and this one looks clear. So that's why I asked, because it actually appears to be clear in your rendering.
Yeah, it would remain as the existing is. So yeah, I guess it's a little bit more opaque than maybe what we're showing on the rendering here.
Okay. Yeah, I just recommend you can still make that like the focal point, but simplify the detailing like you did elsewhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Let's see, Russell.
Hi, Brad. Thank you for the presentation. Is it a cost savings measure to the project to remove the colonnade?
It's definitely not a cost savings. It's a desire by the tenants and the owner to get better visual connection for the center. Right now, that overhang is 10 feet. And it always, as a tenant in there, there's always shadow across the windows. And so even during the day, you can't hardly tell that the lights are on or there's, that any stores are open. It's very dark. And so what the tenants' desire is to pull that back and really create better visual connection for their stores and their merchandise that are in their windows. That's been a long time desire of, I know a few of the, like Men's Warehouse and some of the other ones that have been there long term. It's kind of a deterrent for a lot of new tenants that they don't have a good visual presence because of that overhang.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us are saying it in various ways, but the thing that comes to mind for me is all the recent advancement and public opinion on the streetery concept and dining outdoors and really having an outdoor place to be in the many months that we do have some pretty good weather, and it just the appearance of the umbrellas outside are just sort of exposed out there. It just really, I think, detracts from, in my opinion, some of the goals that I think you have in trying to simplify and modernize the building. And I think it made a lot more sense with that healthy colonnade area before with some of the existing tenants, but. I think that I had a similar question about lighting, and I'm not sure I understood it. Are you planning to light the entryways from the bottom of the projecting canopies?
There would be no. Right now, there's just the proposed, or not the proposed, but the existing smaller lights along that Jessica's pointing to now. Those kind of exist along the pathway. So there wasn't at this time any additional lights in those canopies.
I didn't see a photometric plan. Was that submitted, Brad? I just want to know if I missed it.
No, since we weren't I guess, changing any of the lighting, we didn't submit a photometric plan at this time.
Okay. Well, there is lighting I assume there's lighting under that colonnade, the existing colonnade. From the, from the ceiling. I might be wrong about that, but okay.
Yeah, there are lights. About a third of them, I think, work.
Sure. Okay, those are my questions for now. Thank you. I want to just commend you for getting Walgreens to come around and join the effort. I think that does provide a little more continuity. I don't know that the whole building quite has the continuity that maybe that I would like, but it certainly is an improvement. So just kudos. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Any other questions or comments? I just want to be clear, we are also approving the improvements to Walgreens as part of this, correct? That those drawings are representative of the final exterior changes?
Correct.
Okay. And although there's no rendering of it, I believe I did see some black and white elevations of how the drive-through there over on, I guess that's the east side, will be treated.
Yeah, in the original packet, there were building elevations, and essentially we're just taking off the kind of the gable roof that's on that drive-through and just kind of squaring it up so that it's kind of consistent with the architecture of the building.
Okay. So we've had some comments on thinning up EFIS banding and some changes to the design of the tower element, including maybe even eliminating some EFIS altogether. We've got some suggestions to bite the bullet and go with annuals versus perennials, which seems to be what I see at shopping centers mostly. Anyway, they kind of give up on it and just send Bruce Company or somebody in there every spring and just rip everything out and put in something new. Is there any other comments or questions? I did have the time to go back and look. So if you want to go back and through Legistar, and you can look and see the pictures of the existing building that were submitted during the informational presentation. Otherwise, they are looking for final approval on this. Lois?
Well, I'll make a motion for final approval, taking into account the comments that Cliff just listed.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? I'm looking. Christian, seconded by Christian. Thank you. Okay, now that we have a motion, Kevin, wait, there you go. Go ahead.
Thanks. Just for clarification, I think most of those conditions were self-explanatory, but I think when staff is going to sign off, I'm just wondering if the commission could specify a bit more. I think, Cliff, to the comment that you started about the framing of the EFIS, and put a little bit more shape to that comment and give staff direction at the time of sign off.
Okay. I guess if I was designing it, I think I would make the signage band, the EFIS portion of the signage band, about the same height as what we see in the picture that shows Walgreens from, the white portion of where it says Walgreens. There's a light gray accent on top and a red band on the bottom, but that must be whatever, six or seven, probably 6 feet. So I would say between 6 and 7 feet of EFIS to be framed with a a metal fascia, top and bottom, just so that where I guess the desire is not to have more EFS in the signage area than what's existing already, and that's the impression I get because of the facade being moved back toward and giving more wall area. Now, some areas like where it says you frame it, I suppose we could go say between 6 and 8 feet of EFS area, but I'm only scaling it by eye right now. So I guess, Kevin, what I'm looking for is, approximately a 12 to 18 inch accent band top and bottom. But I will give the architects, latitude to actually design it so it looks right as well.
Okay. Thanks, Cliff. And I guess I will assume that's that clarification is a friendly clarification to the amendment, unless says otherwise.
I would hope so, since I was the originator of the comments that Lois made the original motion on. Is there any other discussion on the motion before we review it for a vote? Russell?
No, Cliff, I quite literally was just going to speak up here so that it sounds like you were already planning a vote, but I personally would like to see us vote on the motion. Okay,
great. Thank you. And if there is a photometric required, I'm sure staff will alert the applicant to the need for a photometric. It's not site lighting so much. I don't know if there's going to be anything meaningful spilling out onto the site, but if there is, then we would expect that to comply. Okay, so then we have a motion for final approval, seconded. Looking for any other questions or comments or objections. If not, then by unanimous consent, we have final approval with the conditions mentioned. Yes, Russell.
I do have an objection to the motion, Cliff.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure procedurally where we are, or if you just, but I may be alone, but I would like to see us go to a vote. I think while I have the floor, I think we are missing out on a big opportunity and losing a valuable piece of real estate there. Understanding the tenants' desires, I think we also have to think about the public's experience of this building. I think losing the colonnade is one that I personally would like to see this project develop further in enhancing that pedestrian plaza. I'd like to see a more substantial planting plan and one that's maybe more realistic, like Christian had mentioned. I think we have an opportunity to see more detailing on how stormwater is going to be controlled with the gutters discussed. And I think it is going to be important to understand how this plaza is lit at night, not just from a site, light spilling perspective, but also from a aesthetic public experience perspective. So those are my
okay, yeah. And that's all very appropriate to bring up during the discussion of the motion. What we will do is we'll take a roll call vote of the motion. And if the motion does not pass, then we'll kind of further discussion and another motion. So then we'll make sure all the hands are lowered. This is the motion is for final approval. All of those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. One, two, three, four, five, six. I see 6, Jess. Is that what you get? 6. Okay. So we will lower the hands then. And once they're all lowered, I will ask for all those not in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, so the motion passes 6 votes to 1. Thank you very much. That brings us then to item number 6, as item number 5 was referred. And this is the park shelter on Littlemore Drive. I understand we have Mike Sturm from the city registered to speak.
Hello, yes, I am. And I'm trying to figure out how to turn on my camera. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Sturm. I'm the City of Madison project manager for the new shelter at Door Creek Park. The proposed shelter is a unique facility for the Parks Division. It's a 4,000 square foot multi-season facility. So this is going to be a shelter that's open year round, and will be available for reservations for special events, community gatherings. So it includes a community room. It also has restroom facilities, a small service kitchen. There's also a bay for our maintenance operations. And it's located in Door Creek Park, which is on Madison's far east side. It's roughly a 160-acre park that also has existing tennis courts, playground, but then also a significant natural area. That's an existing wetland to the south. And the design before you, we worked closely with the district alder and organized 2 well-attended community meetings. The input received during those discussions informed the final design for the shelter. And the Parks Division is working towards achieving LEED Silver with the building. And I think with that, I will pass it off to Doug, who led our architectural team in the design. Doug?
Do we have
Hi there.
a registration?
I did register
Okay.
just before the meeting.
Do you have that, Stefan?
Yes, looks like it's there.
Okay, good. This is just so that we have that on the official record. Go ahead. Thank you.
I want to make sure I'm in full compliance.
You are.
Hi, I'm Doug Powell. I am a partner at R.O. Eberly Architects. It's been one of my professional goals to do work for the city of Madison my whole career since I grew up here. And this was an exciting project for us to have a chance to work on. I think Mike gave you the geographical kind of lay of the land here where we are. The project scope is limited to the building at this time. We're not working on much in terms of site work or parking lot stuff, except for some lighting that we'll be adding to our scope of work later on. But we haven't brought that forward to the UDC tonight. It's not here for us to discuss yet. So if we have to come back, we'll do that at a later date. So today's focus will be on the building and just the surrounding parts of the building. If you'd like to scroll, I'll just kind of voice over as we go through the presentation here. So those middle pages here, these are pieces of the city's parks plan. And then that kind of contextualizes the park and the other park spaces in the city. You can see kind of the density of park space throughout the city. This is a community park, so it's open to all residents of Madison. These are pages from the master plan. This is where the site was determined. So it was in the master planning process, the site for the project, which is at the top middle of the large image on the right. There's utilities there, there's stormwater, there's sanitary, everything we need to supply the building. And then we did a site analysis to kind of really figure out exactly the layout of the parts and pieces of the building. Yeah, you can continue. There's some images, unfortunately, taken in the kind of colder months, so it doesn't really highlight the best features of the park, but it is a beautiful space. And the picture on the upper right is kind of like the view out of the main event space overlooking the big park to the south. This is our site plan, which shows the main site features. So you can see we've got our bike parking, we've got our outdoor event space, we've got some enclosure for garbage containers. These would be the regular wheelie bins. We've got a mislabeled item there. It says transformer. That's actually a condensing unit for the air conditioning system. The transformer will be located near the parking lot for the power. And then we've got 4 pathways that connect to the existing asphalt path that runs through the park. So rather than adding more paving, we're connecting to an existing pathway to give access to the various parts and pieces of the building. The toilet rooms are located in the southwest corner. That's accessible to the soccer fields, to the trails, to the tennis courts. And doesn't have great accessibility to the playground, but you'll notice that we've got a family restroom on the northeast corner, and that provides access for families who are using the playground facility and satisfies some other operational requirements. So that's kind of the site plan. If you want to keep scrolling, I think there's probably a few pages and then some renderings. Probably in like the 9th or 10th page, maybe. If somebody's interested, let's go back 2 pages, sorry. I'll just quickly talk about stormwater. On the grading plan, C301, you can see we're taking downspouts down below the pavement and into a storm drain, and then taking that subgrade to a bioinfiltration swale before draining that further on to the local drainage system here. And you can see our sanitary lateral coming straight south out of the left side of the building there. So that kind of gives you an idea for stormwater and sanitary. And city water comes in from the north, and electrical is coming in from the north as well. Thank you. The next plan is the landscaping plan. This is Mike's handiwork. So this is kind of the plantings that are proposed for the project. It's some nice planted areas, trees, ornamental trees and things like that, and some shade trees around the building there. And if you want to chime in and describe anything or any of your intent here, that's fine with me too, if you're still unmuted.
Thanks, Doug. Just that I work closely with our operations staff on the plant selection. So the Parks Division has, I think, finite resources as far as maintenance, and the plant material was focused primarily on the maintenance requirements that were going to be associated with the plantings. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so then the next page is kind of the big design page, so you can get a good look at the way we've designed the building. We did about 10 massing studies, so we've looked at a lot of different shapes for this building, and based on the orientation we thought was perfect for the site. And we ended up with kind of this split roof design, which has excellent solar control. It has great daylighting. It provides nice coverage for the outdoor space. It's dynamic. It looks cool from above. We don't have like a rubber roof or anything. You can see the top of this building when you approach on Littlemore Drive. So we like the shape of this roof structure. The public voted for this at the public input sessions. And you know, it's kind of a cool shape. It's, you know, better than your average roof shape. I think it's creates nice shadows and things like that. And we've got a kind of a steel moment frame for the open structures and the event space. So we'll be highlighting the steel structure there, and then placing a 3x4 wood roof deck of like Doug fir to form the roof deck. So what you see as wood in these images would be actually the structural roof deck. and then placing a galvalume or similar colored standing seam metal roof with trim of the same color and downspouts of the same color on top of that. And we will have snow guards to protect people underneath the overhangs in winter when the snow starts to melt. The other material palette is clay brick masonry. We've got a light color, which is actually 2 tones of buff. So it's a mixed 2-tone color blend. And then a kind of a bronzy dark brown color shown under the overhang area. And then we've got some accent stripes, vertical accent stripes in the south facade and the north facade of the wall sections that are a little solid without any openings in them. So we've put in an 8-foot kind of module that matches the column grid spacing, and then placed our lighting and things on there. So using regular thermally broken storefront system, we'll have like a butt glazed vertical joint. So that'll just be a silicone joint, and then a dark bronze frame to match the color of the steel.
Okay, Doug, I'm not sure whether or not staff had explained that we typically like to keep these presentations to about 3 minutes.
Oh, please stop me, Cliff. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we've got a good sense of the building and the site. There is existing parking and drive areas, so I believe that's why we're not taking action on those. They are already in place, but we can still make comments on the building's siting and orientation. I mean, if you ask me, does that look like a park shelter? I'd say yes, it looks like a park shelter to me. And it's we have the testimony of Mike Sturm, who's the client, that it fits the programmatic needs within the budget of the Parks Department. So I would appreciate any other questions or comments from the commissioners, as they are not here for an informational, but for action by the commission. Christian.
So he answered my question, I guess, about the plantings and the need for some pretty low maintenance foundation plantings. I was curious because when I first looked at the list, I thought they were, going for a strictly native plant palette, and the forsythia stuck out like a sore thumb because that's a plant from Asia, and all the other ones were native plants. But they did pick ones that are going to sort of take care of themselves largely. Though some of those do spread slowly by runners, so there's going to be some issues with them growing into each other, but that shouldn't really be much of a problem. It's nice that there's some flowering ones in there, and they don't all flower at the same time, and there's some nice fall color in both those, and the service berries out front. So it's a pretty modest planting, but pretty decent selections for what they have. It'll be interesting to see how they develop the areas that this building looks out over. It seems ripe for a really well thought out prairie restoration. My one comment that for sure I would do something about is the enclosure of the dumpsters and the condensing unit over there with the cedar fence around it. Whenever anybody sees those wooden enclosures like that, you're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows what's behind there. There's dumpsters behind there and stuff. So, I don't think it's really good to just have that sitting out there like a wooden box off to the side. So I would really encourage on the north side facing the parking lot and the west side to plant some ornamental grasses, some native grasses. If it was me, I'd be picking one of the many beautiful cultivars of switchgrass, panicum that are out there, Northwind, or heavy metal, or Dallas blues. So there's all kinds of them. And, you don't have to completely shield it, but, maybe 3 across the front and 4 going down the side. And, it'd look even nicer if you fronted those down with some shorter prairie drop seed or little blue stem or something like that. For a few bucks, it would really, go a long way towards not making that obvious dumpster enclosure so obvious.
Okay.
That would be my only suggestion.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or suggestions? Let's see. Tom.
Thanks, Cliff. I'm just wondering if I had a question about the masonry. One was, is it modular brick, or what size is it? And 2, is there a zoom in? I would like, it appears to have patterning as well as those vertical sort of stripes at the 8 foot. I would like to see the detail of the masonry wall where there's that striping. I'm a little unclear where the pattern is coming from. So it's 2 colors of what size brick?
We've got 3 sizes. It's like
I'm sorry,
if you think of like an ashlar size combination, it's 2, 5, 8. So it patterns up really nicely.
All right. So it is a pattern, but it's quite deliberate. And there's also then color variation between those sizes. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's really nice. Just a nice subtle color variation. I forgot to include it. We've done this. We used this on a restoration of Lakeview Park in Middleton. So if you've been to that park shelter and admired the new look, this is a similar masonry pattern and color combination.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just needed that detail. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. You haven't made a comment yet, Russell. Go ahead. And thanks for showing your entire face.
I'm having IT issues. Sorry. So I'm on my phone. Doug, thank you for the presentation. I think, yes, this looks like a park shelter, but I think it's a nice looking park shelter. I have just a couple comments. I see stone mulch was called out, maintenance edge stone mulch. Is it bark mulch underneath the plants, or is the stone mulch just at the building edge?
I can comment on that. So that's on the north side, under the overhang between the planting bed and the building face. The intent there is that we have dry shade. It's essentially in rain shadow, and establishing plant material would be challenging there. We could certainly introduce additional hard surfacing. It's just an area that'll be really challenging to maintain. So the intent was just a narrow band between the planting bed and the building face.
Well, I know other colleagues here would recommend that the plants are in a bark mulch to the benefit of the plants.
Thank you. Yeah, and to clarify, the planting bed will not be in stone mulch. It will be in bark mulch. They'll be edging between the proposed stone mulch and the planting bed, which will have bark mulch in it.
Doug, I'm just trying to join the strong collection of folks that comment on the stone mulch in these projects that come before us, but I'll let others speak to it if what you propose is maybe appropriate. I did want to comment. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I did want to ask you if you've discussed the location of that condensing unit with someone knowledgeable on mechanical systems. The reason I bring it up is for your benefit from a design perspective, it would be unusual to have that type of mechanical system sort of away from the building. Burying the piping that goes to that system, it'd be unusual to bury that under a concrete sidewalk. Where that system really wants to be is outside, is really next to the building, near the mechanical janitor room. So, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's unusual, and I'm just pointing it out to you so that you can be intentional in how maybe you react to potential conflict there or potential issue. And going along with what Christian said too, I do wonder if that creates an opportunity for you to think about the location of that enclosure in general, whether there is something perhaps say near the restrooms, to the backside of the building. I'm not sure, but those were my comments. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Russell. Shane, what do you got for us?
Yeah, thanks. Just real quick, I wanted to kind of confirm it, and just for future reference also, I think Mike's detail is a good one with the stone maintenance strip, just in that roof overhang edge, the way he's kind of providing that edger, and then the plants are in bark mulch. So that's a detail I use all the time too, and I think that's a good one. The only small thing I would maybe change or consider changing, Mike, was maybe swapping out some of the trees for something that really like evokes that sense of place, like a bur oak, for some of those, I think just the 3 trees, something that really sort of resonates with the adjacent landscape. But otherwise, it looks like a nice project.
Thanks. Yeah, and I definitely can look into that. I think that's an excellent suggestion, recognizing the expansive prairie to the south. That's something long term with a very distinct character would be great.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. Is there a motion? Lois?
Well, I think it's a very nice project, and I'll make a motion for final approval.
Okay, thank you. Shane, is that a second? Second, okay. Any discussion on the motion? I think I'd like to clarify with the motion that the comments made by Shane and Christian with regard to the screening of the dumpster enclosure with plant materials and alternative trees be included. I also would make a condition of approval that there be a photographic sample, at least, of the materials, the masonry materials that was described, just for the record. Okay.
Cliff, I just want to interrupt for just a second.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're headed in the direction of conditions of approval on the landscape. And per the code, section 3324, we're only approving authority on buildings themselves. We can make design considerations for the applicant in terms of making changes to the landscape plan, but we cannot include them in our conditions of approval.
That's right. The staff report said it was the building only.
Yep. Sorry, I tried to raise my hand.
No, that's fine. Is that, I'm sorry, you have to remind us the context of that ordinance that you just cited, that it's building only and not site.
Yeah, so this is a public building, and per the MGO Urban Design Code, the commission shall approve plans for all buildings proposed to be built or expanded in the city by the state of Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, City of Madison, Dane County, federal government, et cetera. But
And
the note is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It explicitly excludes the site landscaping plan?
It does. It really speaks to.
I bet the other developers in Madison wish they had that exception that the city grants itself.
Yeah, it really talks about the building orientation, materials, and the siting of the building on the site. It kind of steers us away from landscape or site design in and of itself. So,
okay, so we've provided some really good suggestions on the planting plan for alternatives, and we kindly ask that the Parks Division consider those in the implementation of this project then. Okay, thanks for the clarification. So we have the motion before us, which was seconded and then clarified. I will look to see if there are any hands raised for further discussion or objection. If not, then by unanimous consent, final approval is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on our final project to review here. I believe this is an informational one for the Vintage Brewing Company on Whitney Way.
There we are. All right. Thank you very much. Again, this is, like Cliff mentioned, this is an informational presentation for an exterior renovation to the Vintage Brewing Company located at 674 South Whitney Way as part of the Whitney Square development. Again, my name is Brad Koenig with Sketchworks Architecture, and on behalf of Galloway Companies, the owner and manager of the project, as well as Trent and Mark from the Vintage Brewing Company. They came to us, I would say back in 2018, 2019, as we were renovating the Whitney Square Shopping Center, and wanted to update their facilities as, I'll say, a secondary portion to the renovations we did for the Whitney Square Shopping Center. And so, as you can see, the aerial photo here, if you're not familiar, Vintage Brewing Company is along South Whitney Way. It has an exterior patio along Whitney Way that's heavily landscaped or wooded with I'll say growth trees, and a very nice little patio area. And then it shares parking lot with the shopping center itself. Next slide, Jessica, please. Here's the existing landscape plan that was developed back in 2019 for the center that included repaving the entire parking lot, new landscape islands, and we addressed landscape within the Vintage Brewing parking lot as well, including an additional island that was put in along the west kind of row of parking right up against adjacent to the building. The site's a little difficult as far as site drainage. It kind of drains all the way towards the Vintage, and so we tried to add a number of landscape islands and whatnot to help maintain that, and then regraded the entire site from a drainage standpoint. But the existing facility or the existing building has kind of parking right up within 5 feet of the building along the west edge. And then it has an overhang on the north, which is their main entrance and kind of their designated parking area. Next slide. A few existing photos. Essentially, the bottom half of the existing building is very similar construction to the shopping center. It's actually not stucco, but it's a concrete mix that appears like or looks like stucco on lath and then on masonry. So gray block essentially. So it's basically a kind of a stucco-like material that's structural or part of the structural system. that we encountered on the retail center itself. So that's the tan portion there, the light yellow. And then, as you can see, they have the natural shingles, cedar shingles, shakes that make up kind of that modified mansard roof. And then the top of that is actually kind of a dish where they've got all their mechanicals up on top of that roof, recessed in with a rubber roof membrane. So they, Trent and the owners and Mark came to us and said, we'd like to update, we'd like to make the building a little bit more modern, take it in the vintage brewing a little bit more modern direction. And they liked what was approved for the retail center. And I don't believe those photos made it to this presentation packet, but they really wanted to kind of update the center. And so there's some existing photos there of the patio, which we would not be changing. We were not changing any of the site in this particular project. We'd really be focused on the roof and kind of modifying that, and then trying to bring the building up to a little bit more modern standard. You can see the back of the roof, or the back of the building there. All that wood would be replaced with more of a composite style, so that it wasn't weathered like the cedar shakes are, and make it more of kind of a contemporary enclosure that's for trash and some of their on grade brewing equipment back in that corner. Next slide, please. So we looked at a number of different designs over the years, and they kind of gravitated towards this design, which is basically squaring off the mansard roof, and then putting a material, would be EFIS is what they're planning on it, but scored so that it looked like a running bond. So more of a kind of a unique use, I would say, of an EFIS material. And that would allow for signage on the corner as new vintage kind of placement visible from the street there and from the parking lot, and recreate kind of the entry element of more of a cantilevered canopy that kind of highlights the entry more so than it does now. There would be some lighting up in that taller portion at the main entry. And then the existing stone is there on each side of the door. And if you look back at the existing elevations, it kind of stopped at that point, and the kind of stucco continued all the way down to the sidewalk, as you can see here. And you can very lightly, that's the existing kind of stone. The stone actually reappears along the South Whitney Way elevation. Right there, below the windows, and these are bay windows, and then the fireplace as well. And so the stone really was just kind of hit or miss along that building, just used as an accent. And so what we're proposing is to kind of tie that together, especially on the front elevation, with eliminating some of the, you can go to the next slide, Jessica, eliminated some of that kind of concrete stucco look, and continuing the stone and tying that in with these kind of planters that are underneath the bay windows. And then kind of take the tones of the colors a little bit darker along the base, kind of contrast that with the stone, and then the white kind of rooftop. We also, in doing so with some of these renovations, they have the existing has kind of this open kind of mansard roof above those bay windows. And so what we're kind of reintroducing is a little canopy that kind of takes that difference between the edge of the roof and the edge of the outside edge of the bay window, and create little kind of eyebrows or accents that kind of relate back to the entrances. Next image. And again, I'll mention this again. We're not not proposing to change the patio. So there's a little bit taller difference in the actual building than there is in these renderings, but the patio isn't changing. We're also looking to add some windows on each side of that fireplace to get a little bit more natural light within the dining room area of the vintage. And again, kind of maintain those existing stone planters, they're actually planters at the bay windows. So that would be the South Whitney Way kind of street front. Next slide. These are just kind of two kind of overall aerial shots of the building. Again, we'd maintain the overhang that exists now at the front entrance, but just kind of make it more pronounced and make it kind of more of a modern building. And then, as you can see in the bottom right rendering here, see how tight the sidewalk is and the parking is to that west facade. We would be the detail of the overhang and the wood columns that are blue in nature right now. Those would be removed. They're kind of falling all apart and really is in need of some repair. So we're kind of eliminating those and haven't really gone in too much detail on that side. Wanted to get some input on kind of the overall feel and look of the building from the committee, and then we can kind of introduce something alongside of that of that western wall to kind of complement the building.
Okay, thank you for that very complete explanation. We do also have on the phone or on the list of attendees, Mark, who's in support, able to answer questions. This is informational, so the more feedback we can provide, I think the better. Okay, Lois and then Jessica.
Thank you. So it is an interesting site because you go out there and you're trying to navigate how to get into the building and where to park. And I'm wondering if I've got two comments. One is I think the entrance could use a little bit more pop maybe or interest because now it's just all kind of still the same geometries and the same colors. And I'm wondering if even maybe it's just a lighting solution. But I think the entrance could use a little bit more, it'd be a little bit more pronounced just because of that wayfinding issue. And then secondly, I think, is there the possibility of changing the ephes to maybe a metal panel? Ephes is a very flat material, and I think that the amount that you have on here, a metal panel would probably be more appropriate as far as because of the amount of ephes, but I think it would also be a lot more interesting with the texture and the sheen of it. So those are my two comments. Thank you.
Yeah, or I think on the Walgreens, right, they were using a panelized cement product.
Yeah.
In similar proportions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Lois. Jessica, and then followed by Rafiq.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on sense of place. I understand the need and also the desire to modernize structures. One thing about the vintage brewery, the way it is now, is that funky as it is, it really has a sense of place. And I think the new modernization lost that. So I just wonder if, as you move forward, if you maintain some of the detail that's so recognizable or something that's so unique about this corner building right now. One thing I wanted to mention was the ephes and the running bond and the scale of that. Maybe that could use some review in comparison to the scale and the texture of the stone down below. And I think the facades where you've got bay windows and stone has a certain aesthetic to it that's really fighting with that ephes and that running bond up above. And it maybe could get balanced out more. I understand the existing roof might not be desirable, but one thing it did was really set it as a place, and it also cast some shade and shadow along that facade that added interest. And so if you do think about Lois's suggestion of metal paneling, maybe the metal paneling could get played with a little too of in and out, maybe different surfaces that cast shade and shadow and add some texture that facade, like it is losing a little bit with removing the features on the existing architecture.
Thank you. Rafiq.
Yeah, I agree with what was said earlier. I have my first question is, what's the height of that roof?
You should be able to unmute yourself to answer that, Brad.
There we go. The building height is 21 foot, I believe.
So if just looking at this picture that's on the screen, it looks like the roof is half the height of the building. And I think that's the number one issue. It's just too big. It's too big. And Jessica talked about the pattern of the material, but it's just out of scale. And I know when you go modern, sometimes people like to simplify things, which is okay. But I think this is if we go to another image, the front is just way too simple. I think the scale of the roof is entirely too big, and then the material, the scale of the roof material does fight with what's on the bottom. And I think the massing could work, but I just think it needs a little bit more detail and design. It can be modern and still have some interest and aesthetics to it, and I think that's what's missing here. It's just, the roof is just way too tall.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and the mansard roof is not exactly modernism or mid-century modernism's best gesture, but one of the things about it is it recedes as it slopes away a little bit. But even more than that, I think if you just were to look at the existing photos along Whitney Way, it has these weird dormer things. And what those dormer things do that the new design doesn't, right there, is it kind of breaks up that roof mass where the new design doesn't do that at all. And I think that is also kind of what Lois was getting at with the front entrance as well. So that kind of motif really brightens up a heavy roof line that you could imagine if that was just all mansard across there, how it would look just as heavy as the bottom photo does. Right. And that bottom photo is way too much roof, as Rafiq was saying. So I think I'd encourage first of all, a different panel system, because I think a lot of it's going to be end up being a big, huge EFIS building, and then breaking up with some kind of expression, kind of like what the original design did. And to Jessica's point, I mean, the building still has its integrity, believe it or not, after all these years. That is something, that a lot of buildings this age don't have. So it could be, maybe even as simple as a different, instead of a weird, funky shake roof, maybe it's a metal roof or, some other kind of roofing material over the existing mansard. So just look into, I think the other thing I heard is keep its funkiness a little bit. Any other comments, Rafiq, before I turn it over to Russell? No, thank you. Russell.
Nice presentation, Brad. I know you're just in development, but I do think we're going to want to understand what you're proposing or what's going to remain as far as that outdoor enclosure that we see on the screen currently, that back side. I'm not sure we quite saw your plan there yet, and that's okay. This was a nice presentation for informational. Yeah. Also, back to the front of the building and the main entryway. I know there's some amount of outdoor dining or seating out there now. Is it really the intent to make it purely a walkway like you've shown here, or will there be some outdoor program of some sort potentially?
Yeah, there are a couple of existing chairs out there. I don't know if Mark, if you're still available. I think the intent was to keep it in the patio areas. I think they have a couple of chairs out there now for kind of a smoking area, if you will. Or if they have spillover, people are waiting.
Okay. Well, and I don't know that we need an answer tonight, but I just bring it up to say, it probably, helps align whatever you might do to per the earlier comments about making the entryway pop and just the overall intent of that entryway.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just got a couple more. The column covers are called out to be like something CMG or something like that. What CMG dark bronze, is that a proprietary system?
No, that's more of a composite metal panel system. So it's not just a light gauge metal. It's got some substance to it, so it doesn't dent and.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was getting at.
Sure.
If it's like an ACM kind of a panel, not just sheet metal.
Right.
Great. And then my only other comment is we did, as you probably remember, we went back and forth a lot on the overall plaza design in the background, and I would like to compliment the design team and the developer on the trees that were put out there. My only regret is some of them haven't made it. I think it's been a couple of years, so I haven't been out there since I think last fall. But that's one thing I would bring up is the maintenance or the there's always that mortality, and to keep it up until they really sustain themselves, I think it'd be fantastic. Tom, you're up next.
Cliff, just to reiterate, particularly the issue about the heaviness of the roof, I totally agree. It seems to fight with the bay structures on the Whitney Way side, and whatever you would do to lighten it and maybe bring more verticality up, much like the front entrance, if elements like that could lighten to bring it around to the west and south side as well. That west side is just a big blank wall, and it needs relief. And the south side, you have to solve the utility issue, but to do something also that breaks that the weight of that roof structure somehow. And I guess I have I didn't know, for all the times I've been out there, that there was an outdoor space. That seems, I hope that adding some glazing on the Whitney Way side integrates that outdoor space back into the restaurant space much better than it is today, because that's a lost amenity to me. So I hope that, I'm surprised it isn't kind of built more into like a true beer garden kind of model, maybe even with a canopy structure or something. It seems like it could be, it should be more of an asset than I think it seems to be right now. But mostly I worry about the weight of that roof line. So thanks.
Yeah, it is nice. I've been out there. The nice thing about it is you're elevated way above the noise and hustle bustle of Whitney Way. But you get into it from inside the building. But once you're out there, it's kind of neat being off the street. Okay, thanks, Tom. Rafiq.
Yeah, Tom actually presents a nice segue to what I was going to say. I thought one way that you could probably break up the roof line was to do something over that patio and kind of highlight it a little bit, because it is a feature. And then I was trying to remember, I know when you walk in the door to the immediate right, there's seating in the front. I don't know what's to the left, but you talk about adding glazing to the patio side, but I think the front could probably use a little bit of glazing too, or something to kind of pull you into that space, because right now it looks like you just painted whatever that brown material is, stucco, or I keep losing the screen here.
Yeah, it's existing kind of concrete stucco.
Yeah, it seems like it wants to be a window. It just wants to be a window. And I think that'll help lighten that facade once you take care of the massive thickness of that roof plane. But the one thing that I do like are the eyebrows and that kind of entry canopy, but I don't think it works with the massing of what's around it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rafiq. I think we're giving them some pretty good and consistent feedback. Anybody else have anything to add before we move on to business by members? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing the project and having a beer there, or at least I do. Okay, let me get back to the agenda. There it is. Okay, so what we have next is Jess's report and then business by members.
Yeah, so just to follow up on Plan Commission actions that have occurred recently, I believe on Monday, Plan Commission at their meeting approved the demolition permit request for 3005 University Avenue. And I know that that one will be moving forward, and we'll be seeing that back in a very soon meeting for final approval.
And that was that the Smokies?
Yep, that's Smokies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And the only other thing is this is Stefan's last night assisting us. So I know we've just covered some kinks in the background here so far, but hopefully we won't miss him too badly. So thank you, Stefan.
Where are you, Stefan?
I am here.
Look at that smile.
Unless, of course, he doesn't have anything going on Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be honored to continue to have you.
Or you want to build a new shopping center or something. Okay, well, yeah, really, seriously, Stefan, thank you very much. Getting us on our, on a really good, steady foundation. It was, for us, I know all of us and me, it was really, really, really weird at first. And you and the rest of the staff helped us out tremendously. And I know how much you had to do this for all other commissions and committees. And it was probably a lot of late nights for you. So thanks again.
Yeah,
Russell.
Absolutely.
While we have you, Stefan, I found out the hard way tonight that the Zoom version on my current employer's computer didn't work with the Zoom version required. So is it true that these meetings require the latest version of Zoom and
it depends. So it depends on what account you're logged into. So if you're using the account that you use for your employer, that might have like a different version. Okay. I always try to log in, if I'm joining meetings or something, I try to log in using the web application, because that doesn't require like all the Zoom updates. So Zoom typically updates their local applications like once a month usually. So
okay. All right. Web application. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all along the same lines, I don't know that I want to be noticed on the roll because of my staggering 6-1 loss in the vote, but please note I was late, Jess. And then also, Jess, I'm going to send you an email. I do have a new email address. I did see some communication from you to my old email address, so I just need to make sure I make that clear for you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I also received a mixed bag of some to my personal and some to my employee. So I'll follow up with a clarification, but nothing disastrous. And then I see Lauren has been helping us tonight. I don't know that you've joined us before. Have you, Lauren?
I have not. No, this is my first time at a UDC meeting.
Well,
yeah, Lauren
welcome.
we're borrowing her in Julie's absence. She usually assists with the Landmarks Commission.
Oh, okay.
So thank you to Lauren as well, and maybe we'll see her again at a future meeting.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lauren. Thanks again, Stefan, and everyone else. We will get together again, I believe, on March 9th. And so then if there's no other business by members, by unanimous consent, We're adjourned at 6:25. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Good night.